All right. Hello, everybody. I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest because she and I have been connected for years now. I think since about 2018, we were going back and forth on that just before we started recording. And I know Dani through actually being a former client of mine in my business coaching practice, but we have stayed in touch over the years. I've been following her journey, which is super interesting. And that's why I wanted to have her on the show. And so I'm so grateful that you're here, Dani. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on and taking an interest in my story. And it's really wonderful to be here to see you embark on this endeavor. And I was looking at your Instagram and seeing your guests that you've had so far. And I'm really excited for you.
I know, right? Like what a different pathway. I think, when it comes to what I was doing when you and I met, obviously nothing on this pathway, right? Like maybe conversations, some of the language, but you were already kind of there. And I want to get into obviously your whole background and everything because it's super interesting. I remember your program name was Conscious Champion, right?
Yeah.
And so you were already like on this pathway, but yeah, this is going to be really, really fun. Just knowing you for almost 8 years, you have been on such a unique path. And I think you're just such a beautiful example of really someone who follows their heart and their calling and says no to the things that no longer feel aligned. And I just think your audience is going to be really interested to hear your story in a concise way like this. So I'm so excited to dive in.
Awesome. Me too.
Yeah. So, okay. When we first met, I was so impressed by you because you have, well, obviously quite an impressive background in the bodybuilding world, which feels almost counterintuitive to talking about spirituality. So I'd love for you to take us back to your origin.
It's funny. I was thinking about this podcast today and thinking about when spirituality kind of came online for me. Mm-hmm. And it was actually through athletics. It was through bodybuilding. And even before that, it was when I was a cheerleader, was like kind of the first inkling of like, oh, that's become things. Mm-hmm. And I remember, just to tell a quick story about sort of when all of this started, I was cheerleading in high school and I was a junior, and all of the seniors, the captains, they got ribbons on their shoes. And then out of the however many captains in the competition, they picked like the one sort of top dog cheerleader. And being a junior in high school, I remember going like, I want that award. Then the next year I was a senior, I had a ribbon on my shoe and I actually got that award. And that was the first time where I was like, oh, I remember exactly where I was sitting in this gymnasium. I remember thinking like, I want that ribbon on my shoe. And that medal I actually had hanging up sort of on my bodybuilding altar just to remind me of like, this was a thought that became a thing. So like, don't forget as you're going into this bodybuilding world, this is a way to be competing is like with this side too. So I started competing in high school, yes, but really in the adult ranks when I was 19. And a couple years later, a division called Women's Physique came out. And that one was like so much more fun for me because it was like bodybuilding posing, but it wasn't so, overdone and it wasn't super girly with the heels on. So it was like really right in the middle, sort of perfect for me. Yeah. And I just climbed the ranks over, I don't know, about 8 years or so, and eventually was awarded second in the world at the Mr. Olympia competition and in the Arnold Classic. And that whole thing, and just to like tie in Conscious Champion, I really believe that my superpower was getting tuned into spirit and in the ways that, it came up for me, which was like repeating numbers and synchronicities and little dragonflies and all of these little signs that were sort of mine. And they carried me through and carried me all the way to the top because I feel like it was like the energy that was my secret weapon. I guess I had a crazy work ethic, but I'm 5 feet tall, like 115 pounds on stage. So it's like a number 2 bodybuilder in the world. Yeah. So I just look back on all that and I'm like, it had to be the consciousness I was operating with. And then that's why I wanted to create Conscious Champion with you, which that really changed my life because it was a way that I could add in the little tools and things that helped me and bring them to others, which was mental toughness and a spiritual connection.
Were you raised with religion or any type of spiritual framework?
I did go to like CCD, Christian Catholic, sort of something like that for a little while. And I got my first communion. Eventually, we all just stopped going and I never ended up getting confirmed or whatever. I grew up in that way. I was so confused about what God meant and what prayer meant and how to use those words without it feeling like there was some sort of thing attached to it. And it really wasn't until recently, like my journeys with plant medicine and going to Peru and things like that, that I really got so cozy with the word prayer and with the word God or great mystery or universe or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I did grow up in a way, and then sort of it just fizzled out and left me with like maybe frustrations or this yearning or this sort of like turning my face from the word God. I was like, I don't get it. I don't know. I don't think I should use that. And now I just really love that whole space.
It's a really good point. I've really struggled with the language as well because I didn't grow up with any type of religious background. It was kind of an automatic association. And actually, I find I'm still getting comfortable with some of that terminology. I've not heard anyone quite say it that way before, and I have friends who are very spiritual, but not religious, but they use language that I guess I had associated with religion. And now I'm kind of seeing like it all almost, it's okay to use the same language, even if the belief system behind it isn't perfectly aligned to what I thought it was supposed to be, if that resonates.
It does. It does. It reminds me of like building I can just speak for my experience, but building my own connection to prayer and what prayer means to me and what God, great mystery, creator, whatever it is, means to me.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to get more comfortable because now I had my own relation. It wasn't just this word that was given to me. It's actually a relationship you build with prayer and with God. And then I think it makes more sense and comes out a little less charged and feels a little less awkward.
Yeah. That's such great feedback. Okay. So you weren't raised with this framework. In high school, you had this idea that, okay, thoughts can become reality. When did you shift to seeing what you were doing as spiritual?
Oh, when did I shift to see what I was doing as spiritual? Yeah, it was definitely like as far as the bodybuilding world, that was like a slow roll, I think, actually into that. And it sort of became like a martial art. And there's so many different ways, I think, to look at what can be deemed spiritual. So I was working out and really in this deep meditative state. Like my mind was in every single muscle fiber, and then I was doing cardio and I was sort of visualizing as I was holding on the stepper and transcending and was seeing myself on stage and was seeing myself, with this and that. So even just in the workout, I was tapping into this space that was that felt really infinite inside my body and out into the universe. And so just that, and that's like kind of a physical level to be thinking about it is like that, the meditative portion. And then it came to visualizing. So I would sit in my closet actually, because that was the only place I had where it felt safe and enclosed. And I would sit in there and I would meditate and I would see myself on stage and I would be able to bring myself literally to tears with how real the visualization felt. And everything I was listening to with, Abraham Hicks and all of these different people, they're like, this is a feeling universe. So I started to really feel into that. And I would see myself doing my posing routine on stage. In fact, I practiced more in my head than I did physically. So we got the mind, the body, and with spirit,
I really resonate with that, especially, obviously I was not a bodybuilder and certainly not number one or two at anything. But when I was going to get my kettlebell certification, this was like in 2010, they have this big test that you have to pass and it's really hard and it's really intense. And I spent so much time visualizing it in my head and, hearing how I was going to be breathing and watching the rhythm of the bell and all of that stuff. It just kind of played out exactly as I thought it would. Even before I was aware of the power of visualization and all the things that you're talking about, when I was starting my fitness studio, I basically saw, I didn't even have a location yet. And I was like, okay, I know what color the walls are going to be and the floors, and I know where the mirrors are going to be. And I have an idea of where the rooms are going to be. And I can see my clients and what they look like walking through the doors. And it all just kind of played out. And I can't explain why I was doing that because I hadn't heard the word visualization and I wasn't really paying attention. So I guess you were listening to Abraham Hicks and you were doing some of this work. How did you know, or how were you guided to go into that feeling and allow your mind's eye to be kind of the guide for everything that you ultimately brought into the physical reality?
Well, with the cheerleading story, that was my anchor point. So like, oh, that's when that happened. I didn't even know what I was doing then, but it was like that medal meant a lot for me because what that showed me was like believing in the unseen and believing in a vision. And then it was somewhere around when I was bodybuilding, I actually had like a really tough year where I competed all year long. I missed the Olympia by 1 point. So in the bodybuilding world, you have to qualify to get to the Olympia. And I competed, I don't know, like maybe 4 or 5 times. And it's like bodybuilding competitions are a lot. And I missed it by 1 point. And we're just open booking it today. I actually ended up getting arrested at this party. And it's a long story that came with that, but I ended up getting in big trouble one night. And then after that, it was like a real turning point, a real like look at like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Something's missing. I am beating myself, to death really. And like, I'm still not at the Olympia. What's going on? So I don't know how it came into my awareness, but I watched The Secret. The Secret, it's a book and it's a movie, and it's like the beginning understanding of thoughts becoming things, and your vibration creates your reality. That was the whole thing. I was like, oh, it's my vibration. So then I was like, okay, every single song I listen to, every single thing I watch on YouTube, every single thing I wear, everything matters so much. And like energy attracts like energy. And so I worked with that for a couple months and then did my first show in the next year, and I got second, or I got first. What did I get? Second and then first. And then I went right to the Olympia. So it was like within a matter of like just understanding that vibration is really everything. And maybe why I wasn't getting it before was because of vibration. That kind of changed the game for me.
Yeah. Can you, for people who aren't familiar with the bodybuilding world, explain what a big deal it is to get to the Olympia and really what that takes?
Yeah. So, well, the Olympia, I guess you can think of it like the Super Bowl of bodybuilding. There's no bigger stage than that, which is amazing. And to get there, there's a series of competitions that you have to win to qualify and sort of go to the next one, the next one, the next one. So you have to win a regional competition, so a local one, and that qualifies you for nationals. Once you get to nationals, then you can compete for a pro card. Once you get the pro card, now you're in a whole different thing, because now you sort of have to go through that again, but in the pro rank. So you have your pro card, and now you have to either win a professional show or gather up enough points in order to be qualified for the Olympia. And then once you're at the Olympia, it is like the best cream of the crop, really, you're competing against, and you have one show, 3 minutes on stage.
Yeah, it's a lot. And, there's such a discipline to it. And it was really having a conversation with, her name is Sabrina Soto. She has also been on this podcast, and she was talking about The Secret as her catalyst for just this massive awakening and growth and expansion. And it was actually through my conversation with her. And I want to talk in a little bit just like about your spiritual practices and what day-to-day life looks like for you. But, I always would kind of beat myself up for not having the discipline with my spiritual practices. And I bring this up now because obviously discipline is such a huge component of winning, getting into the Olympia, let alone placing. And so it sounds like you were able to really see that discipline all along as part of your spiritual growth and practices. But it was light bulb moment when I was recording this other conversation where I was like, okay, I beat myself up for not being super consistent or having the spiritual practices that I think I'm supposed to have. But then I was like, wait a second, I have been in the gym consistently for 17 years. I have built and sold multiple businesses, and starting to really see that our spiritual growth and journey and practices don't necessarily look like just sitting and meditating for hours every single day. So I just thought that was important to share. And it sounds like it's a big part of what helped you to get to where you are as well.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much in that. The discipline, I always say bodybuilding trained me for the work I do now. Bodybuilding taught me about believing in a process that you actually can't see yet. And what is that? But spirituality, that is like faith, like believing, and you can work that into business. It's like believing that I'm going to make these posts and do this podcast. It's like this energy is going out into the universe somehow, some way. And it's like believing in the law. Something else I love to talk about is the laws of the universe, but believing in the law of cause and effect, that what you send out must come back. And I think belief is like a big thing. So discipline it trained me like for the work that I do now, for sure. It actually took a little bit of unwinding because in my athletic mind, if I'm not meditating every single day, then I am like not getting closer to the thing. But that's really not true. In fact, like the most spiritual thing you can do is be in life. What I feel is, Ram Dass, are you familiar with Ram Dass at all?
Yes.
Yeah, I love him. He talks about grist for the mill and how life is our grist for the mill. And we learn so much through everything that we do. And if you look at it from that perspective, everything that we do is spiritual. Like every little thing, because we are spiritual and this is spiritual. So, people who think that they're like not living in a spiritual world, it's like, I feel it's just a perspective, right? It's like, that's where they're looking at it from, which is fine. That's part of their journey. But I think the more that you get along the road, you realize that it's all spiritual. I talk about plant medicine a lot. That's a big part of my journey, and how hard and real integration is. So it's like easy for me to be on the mountain, on the medicine, setting the prayers, singing the songs, doing what we do. That feels like home to me. What feels really challenging is when I come back home and need to integrate all of these spiritual lessons into my life. That is for me when the real ceremony starts, but that can be likened to anything. Like you have a great meditation and you have this beautiful insight. Okay, now how do you go out in your day and integrate that lesson into all your triggers and into all of the things that are in life? Like that is actually the spiritual work.
And let me tell you, you are touching on the part that I find the most frustrating. Why can't we just have these insights and know, and it's fully integrated into us, and now we're different? That's all I'm asking. We just skip the rest of the work.
Yeah. Well, and now we're different.
What's that?
I said, you said, and now we're different.
Yes. Exactly. I wish it was like that. I'm curious, and I want to get into, some of the plant medicine work, because some of that has been really relevant for me as well as part of my pathway into trust. I'm curious, it kind of feels like you're telling your story and I'm like, okay, she's always had this knowing, she's always had this trust. Where has the role of skepticism come up for you, whether it's in your just practical parts of your journey, in your belief system? Is there anything that you've had that skepticism or resistance around internally as you've gone through this process?
My first thought is it's a coming and a going all the time. I don't know that I've known this consistently and been able to really put it into practice consistently. It's almost like a meditation, it's like, okay, we're in that zone and then we come out and we're thinking about laundry and then we bring it back. So coming into this trust and this knowing for me has been a process of like forgetting and remembering. And I think that's like the journey of being a human, is forgetting and then remembering, and going into a ceremony and that helps you remember, meeting somebody new and that helps you remember, listening to music or playing music and that helps you remember. So the skepticism, I think, is a thing. And it also reminds me a little bit of imposter syndrome and like having this not trust in the bigger picture and maybe not trust in myself. Can I do it? Am I worthy? All of those things kind of come up. Yeah. And skepticism, it comes more for me with people than it does with practices. I love to get into cultural practices and the ways that different people pray and the way that they connect to the divine. And that for me, I just love so much. When I get skeptical is when I meet people and I'm like, I don't know if your intentions are really what you say they are. You kind of start to have a little bit of a meter. And that's where my skepticism, I think mediums are real. I think people can do that stuff. I think shamans are real. I think all of that stuff is there and available. But sometimes it's the people who are doing it and why they're doing it and how they're doing it. Makes me question spirituality.
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something there. I had hesitation getting into this space, even though I'm not sitting here trying to be a teacher of anything. Like, I'm here to facilitate the conversations because I'm interested and curious and growing. But I did have some hesitation about even putting my voice into this space and perhaps being seen as a part of it, because I believe in all the things that you said. Obviously, I'm doing this whole project because I do, but the commercialization has become really so off-putting to me. And you open your Instagram or whatever, and it's like you just have all these spiritual teachers in your face, and it can be hard to see through the noise and get down to what's true and authentic and what's being done for the right reason. So, have you found a way to be more discerning in terms of who you're following, listening to? Like, do you have any tips or pointers there?
Instagram is one of those things. now that I feel like I get some good messages. I get messages about the moon, and it's really not so much people. It's like astrology or follow as things that I can lead up to my own interpretation. And the teachers that I find, I think there's a resonance already with people, right? So the teachers that I find that I go study with, whether it be sound or plant medicine or yoga, there has to be a certain level of integrity that I feel that that teacher is walking with, and a certain level of open-heartedness and non-judgment, and not needing to be in a position of power. So it's like there's certain things that I watch for and I listen for, and really I think I feel for. You can feel when something's off and when it feels like a no for you. And I think like learning to build that muscle, which I'm not really great at, but I've found my people and I'm like, okay, I must have a good picker because I'm still with them. I think that's the biggest thing, is like really tapping into the feeling and like how people are doing what they're doing, not just what they're doing, but how are they doing it?
Yeah, that's a great point. And, listening to your own guidance with that, even if a lot of other people seem to be following, I would say. I can think of a few people where I'm like, okay, all these people really like this person and follow this person, but it is a huge no for me. And I can't quite explain why, but it just is. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'd love for you to kind of walk us through the process of leaving the bodybuilding world and really focusing on your spiritual growth and journey. Because again, you and I have been connected at this point for like 8 years, and you have really, at least from an outside perspective, grown and expanded more and more and more in that space. So would love to hear that, the role of the plant medicine work that you've done. Yeah. Anything that you would like to share that has led you to where you are today.
Okay. So bringing it back to bodybuilding. So when I left, it actually was prompted by a mushroom, maybe like my first mushroom ceremony. And I had already been in the industry for like 8 years, I think. And I had reached a line, like a boundary with what supplements I was willing to take. I was sick of wearing this waist trainer. I was sick of being under a microscope all the time and having my sponsors sort of control my Instagram and what videos I'm making. And it was just like exhausting and not really the reason why I started. And around the same time, I wanted to stop eating meat. I was kind of going through this thing where I was like, oh, everything's alive. And I am eating like pounds and pounds of meat every single day. And it was just like, and then I was at an expo, like one of the things where there's vendors and supplements. And I was looking around and I was thinking, everybody here has got fake hair and fake tans and fake eyelashes and fake all these different things. And I'm like, everything just started to look so different to me. And I don't remember if it was after that or before that, but I did my first mushroom ceremony. And I remember looking into my eye in the mirror, and it was like one of those funhouse mirrors that looks like it goes on and on forever. And it was like in my pupil was this like infinite soul or something. And I remember asking myself, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to eat? What do you want to wear? What do you actually want to post? And I don't know that I came up with an answer in that moment, but it was the question, like me asking me instead of just doing what I had always done. And I was sitting on the couch and I saw this vision of my husband and I at like Mount Fiji or something. There was a big mountain behind us with a white cap. And I open up my eyes and my next thought is, I have to get up in the morning and do cardio. And I was just like, what am I doing? There's a whole life out here. There's a whole world for me to see that is outside of Orlando, LA fitness, that I was spending 3 hours a day in cooking, training, all this stuff. So that was the first time in my life that I thought, there's something else here. There's a whole nother side of me that I have not even explored. And so slowly it kind of started to crumble, and leaving that, it took me like a year to fully admit, like, I'm not coming back, because my identity was so wrapped up. My stage name was Lil Monstar. And some people didn't even know me by Dani. They would see me in the store and they'd be like, oh, Little Monster. And I didn't realize how much of me was Little Monster until I stopped and wanted to change my Instagram name, which seems so silly, but it's really like a big part of your identity.
I did that too. When I sold my business, I was like, who am I?
Yes. It was a big who am I moment. And I had just gotten married, so my last name changed. I stopped eating meat. I quit bodybuilding. So I was like, I don't even know who I am. And I was selling health insurance, and I went from like living my ultimate dream to my nightmare, really, telemarketing. and like people yelling at me on the phone and just feeling so lost. And we moved to Colorado because we needed to get away from health insurance. We needed to get away from those friends and get away from all the things. And my sister was living in Colorado, and my husband and I were kind of having problems. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, if, at least if I go to Colorado, I have big nature around me. I have my sister around me, like fresh start. It's all good. I'm good. And through that, long story, but I found yoga and started cleaning a studio because I couldn't afford a membership. Eventually went to teacher training and started teaching. And that was kind of around the time that I met you, and I was in Colorado leaving bodybuilding, but wanting to do online coaching, but didn't love the term life coach. It was like all of these things I was trying to. And through that, there was a couple ayahuasca ceremonies and more mushroom ceremonies. I really enjoyed being with the mushrooms sort of myself, and a little bit of dabbling with different things. But it really wasn't until 2021, October 15th. I will never forget the day because it changed my life forever. I went to Sedona. I signed up for this coaching program and did my first Wachuma ceremony. For people who don't know, it's a cactus, contains mescaline, similar to peyote, but there's different alkaloids in Wachuma that are more heart opening and just a little bit different. But that was my first ceremony with Wachuma. And since then, it's only been 4 years, but I have been to Peru 4 times now, coming up on 5 and 6, actually in a couple months. And that it was through those ceremonies, through those Wachuma ceremonies, that I learned what prayer actually is, for me anyway. Mm-hmm. And I learned how to connect to the elements and the directions and these things, and really learn about myself and what is in alignment with my heart. So it's like these medicines they're not like magic ceremonies. Yes, they do give you insights and things like that. But for me, it's been how my life recalibrates around my new vibration after ceremony. And it can look like things falling away, friends falling away, jobs falling away, people, like all different things to calibrate to this new vibration, which can also be super challenging. Mm-hmm. I'm reminded of this meme when they're like, what people think spiritual awakening is like. And it's like rainbows and butterflies. And then they're like, what it actually is. And it's like some kid on a zip line, like totally terrified and just,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's actually, I had my first medicine experience as well, like right before what you're just, I mean, you did before, but like your big one. So for me, it was like September 2021. And yeah, I certainly haven't looked at things the same. And so, okay. So I was in Peru in 2014, I think. And, I was at Machu Picchu and all that stuff. But I just remember thinking this was like even before I had any concept of spirituality. But I feel like there was something under the surface subconsciously. But I remember thinking there is magic in this land. I don't know what it is. I don't know what that means to me. But I remember like saying aloud, there is magic in this land. So what brings you back to Peru consistently? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think you said it right. It's the magic in the land. It's the whole vibration and the whole spirit of that place. And I don't know if anybody out there can attest to this, but when you go to different states or different countries, you feel different. Like I can feel the vibration of a certain place. And there's something about Peru that felt like home instantly to me. Mm-hmm. And it's working with the medicine. It's working with the land. It's the way that people are there. And I think the way that people believe. I mean, there is sort of a heavy Spanish influence with Christianity and stuff like that, but the magic in the land, I feel like it's because people have been praying to that land for thousands and thousands of years. Their religion wasn't always in a church until the Spanish Inquisition. It was actually praying to the spirit of the mountain, which they call the Apus, and praying to the waters and praying to the sun. And different things in Peru are named after the sun and the moon, and they have whole temples that are dedicated to the moon or the sun or whatever it is, or to the waters or to the jaguar or to the hummingbird. So like their way of believing is very land-based. It's very right there. And they're connecting with this mountain for thousands of years. And so I think the spirit of the land comes from that. Everything's vibration. So people are sending their vibration, and you leave coca leaf prayers. It's called Kintu, I believe. You leave it on the mountain as an offering for the mountain. So it's like for years, people have been leaving offerings just for the mountain. Thank you for letting me live here. Thank you for keeping me safe. probably not asking for a whole lot, but it's probably really an offering and a thanking more than anything. So it's kind of like that whole way of life and living. I remember being in the car with my taxi driver, and he was talking to me, and, I have broken Spanish. He has broken English. So together we were kind of getting somewhere. And he was telling me all about the stories of the Apus, which is the mountains. And he's like, oh, this one is that one's sister, and this is that one's mother. And this is it. And I'm like, this is what we're missing in the States, is this sort of way of relating to the land. And then when you take the medicine and you're on that land, it's like supercharged, because of the land itself and the cactus that grow there natively. It really changed my life. Even the food, being in the markets, watching how people have not a lot. And they don't need a lot. They don't want for a lot either. Yeah, it's really the energy of the place. And my teacher is there, and we've been taking people on retreat there for the last couple years. And, every time I think it can't get any better than this. And then each year I go back and I'm like, yeah, that was the best day of my life. And each time I'm in ceremony, this is the best day of my life. Nothing feels more real to me than being on the mountain and in the prayers, praying to the waters, praying to the clarity, praying to love. That for me feels realer than real, and connecting with the land. And yes, there's medicine involved, but that's not the whole thing. Because then when I come back here and I'm creating in my life, I'm creating with the waters, I'm creating with the land. And it's like taught me how to be in relationship with life and with myself. And I think that's, everybody has different places of the world that do that for them. For me, it's Peru. And the fact that now I get to bring people there and be of service in that way is really just, I think, what prayer did I send out to be blessed with these teachers and friends and this place?
I love it. Yeah. My place is the Alps. I've been all over the Alps, particularly Switzerland, but like the Alps, I'm just like, this is the most home, for my soul. So I totally resonate with just having that place. I'm curious what you say to or think about the people who are skeptical or critical of medicine work. I haven't been public about any of that I've done, even though it's always been with a guide or in a psychiatry clinic, like very supervised, very intentional, but I've been very quiet about it because, and people that I speak to, they know, or I might bring it up, but I usually don't, because there is so much, I think, that's misunderstood. So yeah, I'm just curious as to how you've handled that.
And I still come into contact with people who are skeptical about it. And like a thing that comes up too is people think that it's drugs. They put it in the same camp as like heroin. And I just feel so sorry for them, because these are medicines, the ancient earth-based, medicines. And are they for everybody? No, probably not. There are people with psychological conditions and things like that, and contraindications, like for safety reasons. They're not for everybody. But I think because of the way that it's changed my life, and because of the perspectives that I've been given, and the way that I walk, and the way that I am with people, and the way that I can now respond and see life through a certain vantage point and perspective and lens, I think I really, truly believe it's made me a better person. And so when I talk to people about it, that's my conviction. And I've seen it help other people too, so many times, if done with the right intention. So I think that there's a lot of things that come into the mix when talking about plant medicine, because some people take it just to take it because it's trendy, or they want to party in Tulum, or they want, there's a whole way to like misuse this industry really, and this way of evolving. So I think people in general like misuse it. I think even people wanting to serve medicine too quickly misuse it, and they create the stigma that is a little bit disheartening to me, because there's not a lot of time and relationship built with the plant yet. And then you have people coming to their ceremonies and, maybe they're not ready to be of service yet, and it's like too soon. So there's a lot of skepticism out there, and I don't disagree with all of it, but I think my underlying trust in this medicine world is there. And I think people feel that, I think they feel that like, I'm not doing this because it's cool, or because it's trendy, or because it's easy, because it's actually not easy. And if you're doing it right, it's like not so trendy. It is more popular now, which I'm grateful for. And I think that there's measures that need to be taken to really look at sustainability and preservation, because some of these plants like ayahuasca take years and years, hundreds of years to grow. I think people are coming and just taking. And I wasn't really privy to this until most recently when my friends, my teachers, and I created this organization called the Wachuma Foundation. And with the Wachuma Foundation, which is the cactus we work with, we're planting more cactus. So for every person that comes on retreat with us, we plant another cactus. And we have this land where we're doing our best to preserve Wachuma so it doesn't become even more endangered, which it already is. And the indigenous peoples, too, are getting annoyed at us for coming over and cutting down all of their medicine. And we're just taking and taking and not giving back. So the skepticism is real. I'm reminded of Star Wars, actually, in the Force, and how you can use the Force for good or for bad, for light or for dark. And I think plant medicines, social media, spirituality, I think all of these things can be used in the same way. And when you find the right person that you can trust, I think that is what helps break the skepticism, because you feel the resonance, you feel the vibration, you feel the sincerity and authenticity. And then it's like, okay, now we can have a conversation. And the person automatically opens up a little bit more when they find somebody that they trust, even if they're not ready to go yet. They're not ready to fight you with it's a drug and it's heroin and
yeah. Yeah. And I think, the danger of it comes from the lack of intentionality, the lack of understanding, the lack of preparation, not having it in the right setting. I really feel it's so incredibly beautiful and beneficial when you're guided, with someone, and you have that education and you are prepared for it. And most importantly, when you're ready to go integrate it, right? Because you hear about all these people who just go on ceremony after ceremony, but like all the time in between is exactly as it was before, which is why they need like another ceremony to go, fix themselves or feel better or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of the work that we do in Peru, we come back and we have integration calls, because integration is the hard part. Like life is the hard part. Being in this bliss and on ceremony, even if you're throwing up, like that's kind of easy when you're doing it compared to coming back and really getting your boots on the ground and integrating those lessons, because all of the triggers are going to come up. All of the misalignments are going to come up. And then we have to be courageous enough to make the decisions that are more in alignment with our heart and with our new vibration. And if we're not courageous enough to do those things and to really be super radically honest with ourselves, which I think is what spirituality is at the core of it, like being radically honest and able to make the decision and do the things, that the medicine is teaching us. Well, I was just going to say then why keep doing it. But people, I think, get addicted to like the community that surrounds ceremony and going to being in the ceremony space in general. It's not like the ayahuasca is addicting or the wachuma is addicting. It's like being in that space and not fully integrating, which is kind of like spiritual bypassing in a way. They're like not even getting in there. So yeah, there's a lot I could say about integration, because I really feel it's so important. It's so important.
Yeah. And for me, it's like when I've had either those experiences or, just even insights in meditation or under, working with my intuitive mentor or whatever, it's like, when you're in day-to-day life and the challenge has come up, it's like, the lessons logically, but actually pulling them in to change your experience, your emotional state, all of that, as you're saying, is really, really the big challenge. And that's the part that I think, has taken me quite a few years and something that I still have to work on constantly.
Yeah, good. Me too.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
It does.
Right.
It takes years.
Yeah. And I'm glad you're like, yeah, me too, because I think that sometimes people look like you, like, even if just, someone looked at your Instagram, right? They're going to be like, oh my gosh, she's like got it all together and she's so spiritual and she's so perfect. And, the fact that this is consistent work, I think is good for people to hear, and to not compare to where you are on your own journey.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for saying that. And I do not have it all figured out. I'm okay with that. I love work. I love homework and discipline and working through some things. And this is why we're here, evolution.
Yeah,
So it
totally.
depends. Yeah.
Totally. Well, one thing that I want to ask, because you mentioned, as you go through these processes and become different, things change around you, losing friends as one example that you gave. And I've certainly experienced that, just even as a business owner and like really being focused on personal growth and development. And I think it's just a natural part of life. So, with how much you've changed direction, have you experienced any backlash, whether publicly, privately, in personal relationships, online, just anywhere?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The the ones online tend to be the most mean. I
Mhm.
remember posting a song I was singing or doing something and about the altars that I study, and somebody was like, devil altars. Like, or yoga's Satan's work, or like, it's like even something as simple as yoga and movement is like
Mhm.
deemed in this way. So that's been a little bit of the backlash. People coming in and out of my life, there's never really like a huge falling out, I think, because I'm just not a person who fights or has big
Yeah.
confrontations. I like communicate and but what I notice is that friends or places where I'm working will sort of start to vibrate out of my life. Like it'll fizzle out and things just start to feel different there. But then like something else is coming in that's in alignment on this new frequency. That's happened enough times, even back when I was bodybuilding and cheerleading, like when I was first realizing this, that's happened enough time that I'm like, okay, this isn't anything I did or that they did. This is simply a vibrational shift, and we're just not meeting there anymore. Even that's like what we do in the world, So it's not just people. I think it's also like I was doing Conscious Champion for a while and wanted to do spirit school, and then like was going into that way. But then I went to Peru, and then everything in life just really started to shift around that. And that became my North Star. 2 years ago, I came back from Peru. And I was managing a yoga studio with a very good friend of mine. And I was like finally it was more than a yoga teacher. It felt really good to have a little bit of responsibility and things like that. But I am like not a spreadsheet person. I am not a
Yeah.
rule enforcer. I hate charging people for mats. I just hate it. And so like I came back from Peru, and within a couple months, I had the conversation with my friend, and I stopped managing the studio. In fact, I stopped teaching for a little while, and I just went into my sound and my music,
Mhm.
and then something else. So yoga took a little bit of a back seat, and then DJing came in. So I like learned how to DJ because I was like, oh, I want more music. I want more sound in my life. I'd like to not be cleaning houses anymore. And now I'm
Mhm.
not doing that. So I think the more committed that we are in this path, the deeper that the prayer goes, the bigger the vibration is. And then we just have to really trust. And I think after it happens a couple times, like you sell a business or you break up with somebody or whatever it might be, you just trust and know that this is just a shift. And like, for me anyway, I don't feel so caught unconsciously under the waves. For me, it feels more like I'm just watching it all play out. Is it uncomfortable? Yeah. Is it stressful? Yeah. Am I crying? Yeah. But I have this like overarching awareness that actually everything's going to work out because it always has.
Yeah, that trust is such a huge part of, of the spiritual journey for sure. And definitely the one that I work on every single day. And I know people listening to this can absolutely relate to that. And I'd love to ask if there's one experience or thing that comes to mind, when you think about all these experiences that you've had on your journey, what is the most unbelievable or remarkable thing that's happened to you spiritually, if you can identify one?
It's going to be more like of recent times, actually. So, just to give context, when we're in ceremony in Peru, we open up these 4 altars throughout our ceremony on the mountain. And the altars have really changed my life. So, the first altar, just to give like a quick thing, the first altar is fire, gratitude, the winds of the east. The second altar is the waters, clarity, the winds of the west. The third one is air, unity, the winds of the north. And the last altar is love, the earth, and the winds of the south. So after my first time in Peru, like really deepening into these altars and into these lessons, I came back home, and I have for the last couple years, without skipping a day, have been in co-creation with these altars, and I switch them as the zodiac sign goes. So right now, as we're recording this, we're in Scorpio season, which means I'm in water season for me and praying to clarity. So anyway, as the zodiac, earth, air, fire, water, I've been kind of working with that. And as I'm in that month, I'm creating full sound ceremonies dedicated to the water, full yoga classes dedicated to the water. I have playlists that I listen to all month that are all about water. And there's like drips of water, or it's called Clear Creek, or it's something that has that sort of essence in it. For like 2 years, I was so dedicated to this, and I still am to this day. The moment for me that was really big was I was back in Peru, and my intention for the medicine and for the ceremony was like, all right, altars, it's me and it's you. Like, I am here. I don't need to figure anything out. I don't even have a question. I just want to be with you. We started hiking, and I love feathers. They're like all around my spirit space. Feathers are kind of everything to me. So we're walking, and throughout the hike, I find 4 feathers. And there's 4 altars. I happened to find one in each altar that we were walking. And so you open up the altar, you walk for 2 or 3 hours, then you open up the next one, and then you walk with that energy. And at the end of the day, I'm sitting there looking at my feathers, my 4 feathers. And I was like, oh my God. It felt like the altar saw me too. It felt like they were acknowledging me and recognizing me, giving me a little sign that like my blind faith that I've just had studying the waters and studying the earth and going into this within my life, it was like a recognition from the great mystery and from the altars. I'm saying it. It's so hard to capture the feeling, like the gravity of being seen by something that you're praying to.
Yeah.
And being recognized.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I've had a lot of conversations with people also just about synchronicities and signs and things like that. And the skeptical part of me, that the natural inclination is to be like, oh, well, feathers are everywhere. It's coincidental. Right. But I've really learned to like lean into more and more of this. So I love that story. And yeah, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. And I think it's a good just reminder. And you said something earlier as well that made me think, people should pay attention to what their own signs are, right? So it's easier for spirit and the land or whatever it is to communicate and interact with you.
Yeah. It's about the prayers. I do want to say one more thing about the profundity, I guess, of the altars while I'm kind of on this. What I've learned over these last couple of years and working with the altars and working with these prayers and really this like focus has been like, yes, the medicine is very strong. The medicine is super beautiful and powerful. But what's really been knocking my socks off is the way that these prayers enter into my life and sort of start to metabolize and shift everything around it. So for example, if I'm in the unity altar, this was a big lesson I got in the unity altar. So I'm not drinking any medicine at all. I'm just sort of setting up the prayer. Like I'm going to study with the air. I'm going to study with the prayer to unity and the deer. It's the animal. And throughout the month, what I learned that time anyway, was the shadow side of the altar, which is separation, right? So the opposite of unity is feeling separate. And I learned that I was feeling separate from my friends. I felt like they were sort of making fun of me and making fun of my singing. And I was just feeling like I went home crying one day and I was just like, what is this? And I had a little ceremony with myself up here and just took a couple hours to really connect to me. And the next day I felt 100% better. And I'm like, what is that? What shifted? I just took a couple hours with my instruments and a little bit of tobacco and did my thing. And what's the big deal? And I'm like, oh, it's connection. Oh, it was connection actually to me. I was not unified with myself. I was just doing and serving and showing up and doing all these things. And like the lesson of unity was so big because it was like, how can I connect with anything outside of me if I'm not connected to anything inside of me? And so it was like unity on so many different levels, like me and then out there, but then how all of it is actually super connected. And the only way I would have learned that is if I felt separate. Those lessons have been every single month for the last couple of years. And I'm like, maybe we should talk a little bit about prayer and like how it shifted for me. But prayer for me, I grew up thinking it was like in a pew in a church in this way, praying to this man up on the cross or praying in this building. And that was where we come to pray. What I've learned in these ceremonies is that prayer for me anyway, is a conversation between you and the great mystery. Whatever you want to call it, it's just a conversation. And the way that we do it in ceremony is to the waters, to the fire, to the air, whatever. But those are all just reflections of the great mystery. Those are all just different ways that God is revealing itself to us. And there's that word again, like God. But it's like coming through all these different things. And it's just a conversation. And so many times we're asking and we're asked for things when we pray. Sometimes when we pray, we're asking for a lot. And what I've learned through these ceremonies is that we should be thanking for a lot. Instead of saying, please bring me protection, A reframe is like, thank you for the protection.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the beauty that you've given me. That's talking to the earth, thank you for my food and my home and my people and all of the beauty that you give me with the sounds and your sights and all of these things. So it became really a way to just give thanks and give thanks. And that feeling, right? Attitude of gratitude gives you more
Yeah.
things to be grateful for. And so like praying in this way, really just saying thank you, just having a conversation has really shifted the word prayer for me, because I'm not asking for anything. There really isn't like any person I'm praying to. It's really to an energy, which really is yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, if you flip it all around, it's like the great mystery is actually inside of you. You are the universe experiencing itself. So you're praying, but you're actually just praying to different iterations of who you are. It's just a conversation of gratitude.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And obviously the intention behind all of it, you want to be grateful not just so you can get more of what you want, right? But it is a genuine thing. But there's that saying, you're making me think of what we appreciate appreciates, right? So what we put our energy and gratitude into, we ultimately get more of. So yeah, that's such a beautiful share. And I love the shift around, what you define as and what prayer means to you. I think it's all really, really powerful and stuff that I'm working on and working through myself. And so the last big question is there anything that you're currently like learning, or what is like of most interest to you in your studies, your pursuit right now?
Two things actually are really like hot topics. Sound, for one, is huge for me. And the other one is wachuma, which is the
Mm-hmm.
cactus that we work with. So
Mm-hmm.
just to go into sound a little bit, I started working with sound about 2.5 years ago, pretty consistently. It has changed my whole life. I mean, I never was musical, never in band, told my whole life I can't sing and that I'm tone deaf. And like, that was just not a thing for me.
Yeah.
And after an ayahuasca ceremony, my teacher actually gifted me a flute because I had this vision of myself turning into a flute. It was like all of the holes in my face moved around and became a flute. And then the universe was playing me. This was before I had a flute, had any musical, anything. So this was just happening. And I was sort of like this instrument. After the ceremony, my teacher gifted me this flute. And I remember being on the plane on the ride home trying to make little squeaks. And it was like kind of working. And I was like, oh my God, I can make a squeak out of a flute. And then from there, the belief and the potential and the curiosity and the sort of like infinite potential blew open. I was like, oh my God, I can be musical. So then I got a flute, I got another flute, I got this instrument, that instrument, and learned how to play so many different instruments. And what's so cool about sound for me is not only did I think I would never be able to do anything like that, but it's a really beautiful way for me to be of service to others and to bring them into an experience that is beyond, what they're currently experiencing. And it's kind of where science and spirituality meet for me, because
Mm-hmm.
sound can be very woo woo and sort of Reiki and like there's a lot of talk like that around it, but it's also like there's certain brainwave states, there's certain like musical principles that work here, like entrainment and sympathetic resonance. And so there's like cold hard facts that these instruments do something to your state.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I'm so interested in that convergence of science and spirituality as well. I think, anyone who is a skeptic, right? This is spirituality for skeptics, is also looking for that evidence-based stuff. So I love that you brought that in.
For me, I guess I am a little bit of a skeptic. I like really grounded, practical
Mm-hmm.
information. And that's probably why I enjoy my teachers so much, is because their feet are on the ground. You
Mm-hmm.
can have an actual conversation with them. Sometimes with sound or plant medicine or any sort of like spiritual world, it can be sometimes hard to have an actual grounded conversation. And that's where I lose a little bit of interest, because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that it's just not. But for sound, for me, there's like a huge convergence. And that's where I get excited, because I can take people to spiritual places because of what these instruments are doing to your brainwave states. And that speaks to like the vibration that I hold as a facilitator is like super important, because I'm sort of this space holder in the room. And I've seen it time and time again, like wherever I'm at is actually what people are going to be feeling. So I take it as serious as I possibly can to be holding the space as cleanly as I can. So sound for me is really everything. It's not, well, it's half of everything, but sound is huge. The other half of everything is the Wachuma Foundation and the work I do with them. We have a podcast. So we're starting to have conversations about Wachuma, because a lot of people talk about ayahuasca or
Mm-hmm.
mushrooms or, other things, but you don't really hear a lot about Wachuma. And it's like kind of sad. I mean, I'm sure there's like a bigger plan for why it's just now sort of coming online for people. But it's a really beautiful medicine. I mean, it is so light, high vibrational energy. And so we're having conversations about it. We have a cactus sanctuary. We're trying to preserve it. We're taking people to Peru. We're doing retreats in the States. We have shirts. I'm surprised I'm not wearing one right now. I actually wear them all the day. And they say pray more, worry less.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So those are like the two big, huge projects and really my North Star in life right now, stuff that I am dedicating everything to. I feel this wave coming, this shift coming where it's like even more commitment and even more dedication. So much so that like, I'm kind of like, put me where you want me, even if everything changes. And talking about trust, this is the next level of trust that I think maybe I'm working into with this is like really just committing myself full in and just saying, okay, like you take the wheel and just show me where I can be the most helpful.
Yeah, I love that. You're showing up and matching that surrender with the work that you're doing and just trusting that it's going to lead you exactly where you're supposed to be. That's, I think, exactly how I try to do it, but not always. The surrender piece is hard, but yeah, I think that's so beautiful. So what's the name of the podcast?
It's called Plant More, Worry Less.
Okay. Love that. And so, yeah, tell us, you've got your retreats and I see you do the sound ceremonies. I see you do your yoga stuff locally as well, but tell us about where people can find you.
Yes, I think Instagram is probably the best. My website is going through a revamp right now because it was all of my old like online coaching stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is like none of my new energy. I think just find me on Instagram. You can email me on Dani@DaniReardon.com. And if you want to find out about our retreats to Peru, you can check mineralshaman.com. That's my friend, my teacher that I work with. He sort of like leads those. And yeah, I'm going to Peru with Sacred, the yoga studio I work with. There's like so much to look forward to this year. I'm just like taking a deep breath and trusting and buckling up. So I think just message me, I think.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you. And you just have such a beautiful, calm, grounded energy. And I love your openness to your whole process of navigating everything that you have been transforming through for all of these years from, top of world-class bodybuilder to really a spiritual guide and teacher who you can tell is just very genuine, authentic, and, leading from a place of love. So it's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I just am so grateful for this long-term connection we've had. And I love the work that you're doing. And thank you for being here and just sharing so generously.
Nicole, thank you so much with all my heart. It's wonderful to be having this conversation with you. And I really appreciate the chance to share my story and just kind of where I'm at. So thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.